Hello, everybody, and welcome to the show. This episode is brought to you by The Wellness Paradigm, a holistic health coaching company shifting the way that women understand and heal their bodies. Through bioenergetic testing, functional lab testing, and functional nutrition, we uncover what traditional approaches often overlook, so you can stop guessing, start healing, and finally feel like yourself again. No more one size fits all protocols, just real answers, deep rooted healing, and the clarity and confidence you deserve to feel incredible. It's time to shift the paradigm of women's health. Now, on to our show. Hello, Courtney.
Hi.
Courtney and I are gonna just have a nice jamming session over here about gut health and all things gut health. She is an integrative holistic health coach that specializes in helping women heal their guts so they can beat bloating, acne, and fatigue at the root. So, Courtney, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you guys for having me. I'm excited to hop into this, honestly. I love to yap with women, but my name my name is Courtney, and I say this like the pun is definitely intended on this one, but I've seen some shit literally in this with myself. And I've been doing this for 5 years now, which is insane to even think about. If you would have asked me 5 years ago where I'd be today, I'd be like, whoa, who is she? Because I feel like a lot, just like you, Shannon, a lot of women enter the health space, especially that you see like for practitioners, coaches nowadays that came from, more of a bodybuilding realm, that era of our lives. And I wouldn't say that's exactly what started my journey into this. It's funny where I am now because I can really look back and be like, oh wow, you had gut issues since you were a child,
Oh
but
yeah.
you didn't know. And I really did think that they all began like more so kind of with the bodybuilding thing, but in fact that my body was already holding the bullets, like, but the bodybuilding and everything after that really pulled the trigger on that one. So yeah, when I really look back, I've been in the health industry for about 10 years now, which is crazy. And I got into the health industry because at 16 I was an addict, and from there, when I decided to get sober, I gained a lot of weight because I didn't really know what else to do with myself. When all my friends were out doing their things, I decided to stay home and eat food. And that was my way of coping. And then, obviously, as one would, you would gain a lot of weight from that, depending on your body type, obviously. But I definitely gained a lot of weight. And I just remember one day I was like, I like can't feel like this anymore. And that's kind of when my health journey really began. And then from there, got into bodybuilding. From bodybuilding, um, that follows with, a lot of health issues. I was very, very ill for a long time. And I think for the longest time, I actually didn't know that I was. I was
Mm.
just so much on autopilot and overdrive of all the things that I was doing. I'm really blunt and I'm really real and raw about my journey because I do think in the space you need to be, because if you're not, it's just so many things go missed and there's no reason to hide behind anything. But I did a lot of steroids, and I had a lot of guidance that I went under, but I just wasn't properly educated. And I think that's what it really comes back to, and all the things that I was putting in my body, right? From birth control, steroids, supplements, countless hours of cardio, toxic relationships, stress, nervous system, drugs from before, drinking, smoking, you name it. The girl, she's seen some shit, and her body definitely has went through that. So yeah, I know talking with you before, like, just seeing doctors and going into the healthcare and not actually getting any answers for the issues that I had coming up. And if I wanted to explain all the issues, we'd be here for a hot minute. But my main ones is I didn't have a solid bowel movement for 2 years, and it was really shitty, literally. Like, I just like you couldn't control it. I maybe some days had 10 bowel movements, and it was just crazy. My eyes were black. I couldn't eat anything besides chicken and cucumbers without pain. And the best way I can actually describe it is that every time I would eat, it would literally feel like my guts would take this food and like boil it and disintegrate it in my stomach, and then it was just like I like could not control my bowels, and it hurt. It was hot. It was painful, and I lived like that for like 2 years. I felt like a walking zombie, and no matter what happened or where I went, what specialist, what program I joined, nothing got better.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember one time I just was like, "Do you think it's birth control?" Because my doctor was like, "Absolutely not. Birth control doesn't hurt your stomach." And I was like, "Okay, sounds good.
Feels good.
It sounds good. I'll keep taking it then." And yeah, I was just getting so fed up with the way I was feeling, and it just kept getting worse and worse. And I was 19, 20, like my early 20s were just like being robbed of me, it felt like. So I wasn't making plans, I wasn't seeing friends, I was getting sent home from work, and I was a hairstylist at the time too. And yeah, having to hold your butt cheeks while trying to do hair is not it. um but yeah, I had this epiphany, and I was like, you know what, the only thing I've shifted is actually my birth control. So I was like, I decided to take my health into my own hands, as we all really do. And that's kind of where we've all ended up, where we've ended up. And within 2 weeks, symptoms that I dealt with for 2 years started getting better. My gut stopped screaming. They would literally scream all the time. I remember this distinctive time I was doing my client's hair at the salon, and they were like, "Was that your stomach?" And I was like, "Yeah." She says hi. And it was just not it. And yeah, so like when that started getting a little bit better, and I'm sure you probably relate to this too, and I know a lot of my clients do, the people that we see, or anybody who's really dealt with a lot of issues, I was holding on to the sliver of hope. If I had a little bit more energy that day, I was like, "Oh my God, I'm getting better." Or like, to see like the screeching of my guts stop being so intense, or not having to rush to the washroom as much. Like those were little signs that I was like, "Oh my God, wow, we're doing it. Thanks, body. Like we're getting better." And yeah, things started to improve from there. And then I feel like I was doing really good. It was really good. And then I feel like, when your health is like a roller coaster,
Oh, yes.
you're really good. And then you're like, hit this point and you're like, "What happened?"
Mm-hmm.
And this was me trying to get back into bodybuilding, because I had quit bodybuilding through a lot of this. And then I decided to dabble back into the steroids. I decided to try to start to prep, really to go back into a prep again. Like I wanted to do a big build. And my body was just like, absolutely not, girl. And all my symptoms started coming back. And I was like, oh, shit. Yeah. And then I started to gain a lot of weight. Before I was really small. I was really shredded. I was jacked. And then out of nowhere, I started to gain a lot of weight. And I didn't really realize it at the time. And then I was having acne, and which I've never really had acne. And my hair, like my face, and no matter what I did to lose weight, I just couldn't lose it. And that kind of led me to even a deeper part of that. And it's so crazy, because when I look at this through like a whole span, I'm like, wow, that was a long time. And when you try to talk about it, you're like, okay, but there's so many evolving pieces to this, which why I think it's so important to look at somebody's health history as a whole, going back to like childhood. So like when I piece things together now, and I'm like, oh girl, you were struggling way before this. And yeah, things really didn't improve for me until I left a 5-year relationship. I moved provinces. I live in Canada, guys, so we're provinces over here. And I really dove into a whole new way of healing, like a whole new way. I changed my entire lifestyle almost, and I didn't realize how big of an impact your nervous system had.
Yes.
And that was probably the two biggest pieces for me to then uncover, which I know we're probably going to get into this. I had parasites. I had a lot of overgrowth. I had mold. I had heavy metals inside of my body, and I had a very dysregulated nervous system. And honestly, since that, I've never looked back, and I've never been healthier, and I've never been happier. And now we help other women do the same, which is super cool because I love doing it.
I feel like our stories overlap so much.
I know when you came on my podcast, I was like, girl, I see you.
Literally, it's crazy. And I feel like why we're so passionate about what we do too is like I could have saved myself years of trauma, of delayed healing if I just would have gotten over myself and just I mean, I had a huge ego. I was like, I can fix this myself. I can do this myself. And I struggled so bad too, and it was, nobody could help me. It wasn't that I wasn't trying to do the traditional things. I think I went to 5 GI doctors and nobody helped, which is why integrative healthcare is so, or integrative health, I should say, is so important when you're dealing with a gut issue.
Mhm.
I'm not saying don't go to the doctors, they have their time and place, but like if you really want to understand the root cause, and when I say root cause, it isn't always parasite. So I'm glad you mentioned this. It isn't always parasitic infection, overgrowth, SIBO, things like that. That will contribute to symptoms. A lot of the root is nervous system. So I love that you're like, wait a minute, when I left that toxic relationship, then things
Yeah.
started clearing. And the birth control was, which I don't know if they're newer studies or new, but there's a new study that just came out actually about how birth control changes your gut microbiome. And
Hmm.
so there's actual studies being done on it
Yeah.
now, which is really nice. I'm not saying don't go on it, but that is a
Yeah.
factor that I think will nearly 100%, maybe 90% of the set gets dismissed by a traditional doctor. No, it
Hmm.
doesn't have a factor. So
Hmm.
interesting, very interesting. So I'd love to know if somebody's maybe dealing with bubbly guts, right? Weight gain, diarrhea, constipation, oscillating, just like knowing something's wrong, right? What would you tell them as far as like a few first steps into trying to feel better?
Yeah, definitely. I think the first one is that we don't need to go add in all of these things. I think it's taking a look at like what they're currently doing
Hmm.
and what their environment is. I would say the first one, like lifestyle, habits, how are you eating? How are you spending your time? I think that is like one of the biggest ones because as you know, your gut issues won't really get better if your nervous system is really still struggling with that. Because if you're constantly in a fight or flight, you're not actually able to really digest or absorb your foods. Like you're going to feel more bloated. You're not going to break it down as well. Your body's basically cutting off that digestive function. So for me, like the biggest thing when we bring or even just talk to anybody, one of our first questions is just like, what's your routine like? Because when we can like look at your routine, look at your daily habits, that's going to tell us a lot more than a lot of other things that we're going to because it really all starts with that. You can't go into a deeper, say like overgrowth protocol or parasistic protocol or maybe even more things down there like autoimmune, all of those until you actually start at your foundational habits because you can't skip past diet, you can't skip past nervous system for one, and just the way that you take care of yourself. So I think to answer your question, it really would be like taking a look at like if you could give yourself, I don't want to say a time audit, but an audit through your day, basically looking at what you do from where you wake up to where you go to bed, it would be what does that look like for you? And from there, that's where we can actually start to see, like maybe you are waking up and you're automatically in like a fight or flight response and you're not doing anything for your day. Maybe the way you're going to sleep, you're not even allowing yourself to have like a good night's sleep. And a lot of your recovery is going to happen in your sleep. So
Hmm.
for us, we like to, yeah, cover one is like just the foundations. Like, what are you doing in the day? What is your food like for one? Because that's just the backbone. We all know this one. And like, what does your stress response look like throughout the day?
Boy, I think that's a topic that comes up in every conversation I've had on this podcast, but it's just, stress and it's the role that stress has on your body. And many, many people listening to this, will feel, oh, I'm not stressed though. Okay, girl, but your chronic diarrhea is telling me something different, It's like, but you have something called this vagus nerve, right? That runs from your brain down to your gut. Like there is an actual thing that's connecting the two together, which is why I love like vagal toning. I'm sure you do that with clients and stuff.
Mhm.
Yeah, it is so important. You'll notice it's kind of like when people think that their gut and their brain aren't really connected, because people don't, and I understand that wholeheartedly. I'm like, have you ever been really nervous to like go on stage or do a test and then you're like, I gotta run and take a shit? Like that that's that, or, it's something like that. But I think everybody's had that feeling at some point, right?
Yeah, 100%. Or like for some that get really stressed out, it's like, okay, maybe you're not going to the washroom for like a day or
Yeah.
two after that. Cause I know we have clients that are like, I get so stressed out, I can't go to the washroom at all.
Hmm.
Which is,
Yep.
I was not that way, but,
Mm.
but yeah, no, it is actually crazy, like how much your gut and your brain are connected. And that's why the little habits and your routines actually really do matter. Because if you're doing things throughout your day that is like constantly putting you, and I don't want to like sit here and say stress is bad, because we really do need stress like in our lives. Like we need stressors, we do need our cortisol.
Mhm.
There are good stressors and there are bad stressors, but it's when your body's constantly put into that like overdrive and that fight or flight state where then we see all these other things happening and not getting better. So I think, yeah, like the best things you can do. And I'm sure, yeah, obviously any person that's in the holistic space knows that nervous system needs to be like top prio for just like daily habits. I think that's the best place to start.
See, you think so. But so many people, like so many of our clients have worked with other people, and then they come to me and we actually fix their problem. And one of the first things I address is, has anybody talked to you about nervous system? They're like, what is that? And it's like, so you were doing all these protocols, all these supplements, all of the things, and not getting better. Yeah, it makes sense. So we don't need to go spend $600 on a stool test, or whatever. It's like, we need to fix this first. If we're still having problems, okay, we can go, run
Mm,
some more labs. But, it all comes down to that for a lot of clients. Not everybody. I mean,
mhm,
I know for me personally, like I worked on my stress, but I still had crazy high levels of C. diff and overgrowth and,
mhm, of
high
course.
autoimmune markers. And, there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
But yeah, that
Yeah.
that is not addressed by a lot of people. And that is the missing link, I think, to so many people's health journey. That gum
Mhm,
brain connection also goes deeper when you think, um, you know, I can't remember the exact statistic, but like 80% of your serotonin's created in your gut. I said butt, haha, in your gut. Whatever. We're talking about butts. It's all good. But it's like I can't tell you how many clients' anxiety clears or gets better by working on the gut. Like
Yeah.
I have so many clients. Obviously, I don't work with their medications. I have their doctor oversee that. But like get off SSRIs when we do gut healing protocols. Chronic panic attacks. Chronic, it's like the gut goes so much deeper than I'm just bloated, constipated, or I'm running the bathroom.
Mhm.
It's like your mood, your energy, also how often you get sick. So if you're getting sick all the time, let's look at your gut, girlfriend.
Yeah.
It's like the gut, people really underestimate the power that this has and how important it is to really like get it balanced.
Yeah, I literally say like your gut is you.
Yeah.
Like it is. And obviously the way that we work with our clients, like our methods are just like going back to your roots. And your
Hmm.
true roots are your gut and your nervous system. And like you already said, they're interconnected by your vagus nerve. So those two babies are BFFs and they're talking all day long to each other. But everything like I want to say it's 90 to 95% of serotonin.
Yeah,
You could
could be that
I
high.
could be off on that one too, but it's very high.
Very high.
And 70% of your immune system, yeah,
You
resides
know
in
that
your
one.
gut. Which is cray cray if you really think about it, because we are so quick to do all these different things instead of just doing the work that actually takes to get us well balanced again. And I feel like a big thing with nervous system and gut health that I don't really think is also talked about enough, that if you do have something deeper going on, and whether it's overgrowth, there, I know for you, you had like autoimmune conditions and everything, like that alone is a stress on your body. Like
Hmm.
that is a stress. And then when your gut is inflamed and stressed out, what do you think it's talking to? It's talking to your nervous system. And then it's letting your body know that you're stressed out. So if you are somebody who like, I'm not that stressed, but you are pissing out of your asshole, girl, you're stressed. And that was one that I really it really really humbled me, and I didn't realize how badly that made a difference until, like I said, I left like a toxic 5-year relationship. I moved and all this weight that I was doing everything. Like, because I was coming out of the bodybuilding space, like I knew how to track my macros, I knew how to follow a meal plan, I knew how to hit my steps, my cardio, my workouts, 5 days a week, you name it, was doing it all, and was gaining. And then as soon as I moved, it just melted off of me. And I wasn't tracking my macros. I was like, I need a break from this because I was going through it. And that alone just made me realize truthfully how important my nervous system was in my healing. And my gut did get better. My gut did. It wasn't the whole story. Obviously, there's so much more that goes into that. And nervous system won't be the entire thing that is going to get you from point A to point B, but it's going to be that like big fuel, that big fire that's going to push you there. And I actually ended up was it last year? I don't know. Time's going by so fast now. I ended up joining a 4.5-month one-on-one intense breath work therapy, trauma like therapy thing. And it, like, I talk about this all the time on my podcast, but it changed my entire life. Like my entire life. I thought I got a lot better and my body responded a lot, like really good. All was good. And then again, roller coaster, had a flare up, was like, what's this about? And then, I joined this one-on-one program with my girl. Her name's Christine. And I also was working on a lot of parasite things within my gut, overgrowth, all of that. And that, like, those two things just just changed everything for me, changed everything. And it really shows me like the power of your nervous system. So when we work with our clients now, everything in their protocols, again, like you said, like, don't go spend $600 on a stool test until you have like some of these like foundations, like your nervous system down and everything, and looking at that from that aspect. So everything, we do inside of our containers, like, it all has to do with your gut and it all has to do with your nervous system, everything that we really do, because without those two things, the other things that you want, like the proper bowels, the energy, the glowing skin, isn't going to come without those.
I love that you mentioned breath work, because we talk about that a lot on this podcast, different modalities for nervous system reg, and, breath work's a really big one. And I know I was pretty resistant to it. Not resistant, but when I first heard about it, I was like, okay, I'll do it. I heard it helps, and I've seen so many crazy somatic releases. I haven't personally had one, but breath is the foundation of who we are, and breath work, especially if somebody's trauma informed, is incredible. I've brought in, we talked about Kendall, but she's my somatic integrative health practitioner, and she comes in, does breath work, and we'll do, different nervous system regulation techniques. But that was one of the a huge turning point for a lot of clients too, which is you don't immediately think that, because a lot of people don't want to slow down and be like, oh, I'm just breathing for an hour or 30 minutes, whatever it is, what's that gonna do? But it's so powerful. So that's cool you did a one-on-one coaching too, because I think that's so helpful to really get into it and really see the most benefit is through that one-on-one, coaching.
It is, I can't talk I rave about it so much, because I'm just like, how did I go all my life without knowing about it or without doing it? This is hilarious that because we're in the space and obviously in the online space, but when somebody like a client or a potential client is messaging you and then they ghost you because they're just not fully ready yet, and then they'll pop back in and be like, hey, I think I'm ready, and then they'll ghost you again. And that was me with Christine 4 times. Yeah. And I was actually kind of scared. I was scared of the things that I would have had to face. I was or what was going to come up for me. Or knowing that some people have these huge releases that they some people lose control of their body, or or start screaming. I was like, whoa. I was like, that kind of scares me. And I remember just the last time I had this huge mentee bee, and I was like, I'm gonna pull out my hair or something. I am not okay. And then I was like, I need to do this. I really do need to do this. And then it's just crazy how much I wish I would have done it sooner. And I know it's like the same for like the things that you do and the things that I do, that every time you bring somebody through, they're like, wow, I wish I would have done that sooner.
Every time, pretty much. Yeah.
Every time. Me too. When I was going through a lot of my journey, like you mentioned, like so much trial and error, but I know that's what's given me a lot of experience to where I am. And when I was going through a lot of this, I didn't have the money to go to a naturopath or anything like that. So I remember when I ended up finally being able to go to a naturopath and get my first Dutch test, I was like, oh my God, it's like crazy these exist.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yep.
yeah, it's honestly so crazy. But yeah.
I think that's a good point too. You know, I didn't either actually when I was first doing this, you know, I was so sick and I didn't really have the money for all the testing. And now I did make it work. Like I was like, I don't have a choice because I was engaged at the time. I turned to my husband, I said, I feel like I'm dying. And I feel like this is actually a part of the story that's relevant. But while I was going through my gut issues, right? Chronic diarrhea, bloating, distension, I was in the ER 3 times. I couldn't walk. I walked with a cane. My inflammation was so bad with my autoimmune issues that they couldn't diagnose correctly. But then more than that, I had had a history of skin cancer and I was going to the dermatologist and I would have precancerous moles pop up. And I suddenly had 6 that year show up, right? And
Oh,
then
wow.
right after that, I had like 4 or 5 more show up. And I'm like, you're gonna tell me those aren't related? I had a colonoscopy, I had polyps in there, you know, I was suddenly developing like allergies, like all of these things that just were all related to my gut. Because once I cleared it, I haven't had a problem ever since, right? With
Mhm.
any of those things. But it was just had I not made that decision to change, whether it's with somebody or without, it was just like
Yeah.
I don't know where my life would have been. I mean, I remember doing a gut healing protocol, and within oh God, maybe a month, maybe even last time, I ditched my cane completely. Like I
That's
was on
crazy.
5 leaves a day and walking with a cane, like barely. When I say walking, I'm hobbling, like barely able to keep up. And I was fine. Noah leaves cane ditched, right? And I would have flare ups here and there. That's another story, but it's like people with autoimmune issues, especially skin issues, right? Like allergy issues, immunity, like, oh, that all comes down to the gut.
Mhm.
It's so important. But even if you don't have the money to necessarily go and get a test, you know, there are so many things you can do to help in the meantime. And so I'd love for you to maybe jam on some things that are, you know, maybe like different levels. Like if somebody's brand new starting out, they want to try to figure this out on their own. I feel you, girl. Let's start there. And then if somebody's maybe a little more advanced, wants to take it a step further, what would that look like?
If they don't have like, are we going the way if they're like not spending money on this?
Yeah, yeah. They want to do it like on a budget. They want to try to do it on their own. Maybe they want to spend a little bit because like they're hurting, but yeah.
Okay, cool. I love that. I think right away for both of them, I know we already touched on this, but it's just so important, you guys, is your nervous system.
Yeah.
I Working on your nervous system is free. Getting out in the sunlight is free.
Yeah.
I sound like a broken record on my own page and when my podcast and everything, but we teach women how to use real food, their body, and the earth as their power tool to
Mm-hmm.
feel good. And a lot of those things are free.
Mm-hmm.
And they are the things that we're blessed with. And they truly are, they have such an important part in your journey. So, my favorite thing is like nervous system right away, because if we can start to bring some of that inflammation down, and get your body into a place where it wants to, digest and absorb some of those like nutrients that you're going to be intaking, that is truthfully one of the most important and least expensive things you can do for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So I think for both like levels is, especially level 2 is like, I think some of us get more advanced and we think that we can just skip out on those things,
True.
because I coach a lot of coaches now,
Mm-hmm.
and to help them so they can like coach their clients better. And I always like to say to the women in the entrepreneur space, we're not built different. We are not built different. Okay. We are to an extent, but you have a nervous system, you have an endocrine system, and you have a gut. So we can't skip past those things. So the basic things we still all need. I have to remind myself that sometimes, like, whoa, girl, let's slow down here. Let's
Mm-hmm.
connect your breath. Let's like, why are you rushing right now? Really? You don't really have to rush anywhere. But first thing is nervous system for everybody. And like maybe if you're new to this, maybe that just looks like starting some like box breathing where you're
Mm-hmm.
like breathing in 4 seconds, holding 4 seconds, breathe out 4 seconds, and then hold at the bottom for a second. So you're basically doing a box. Maybe that's how you're starting your morning. Or maybe your morning just looks like you're not touching your phone for the first 30 minutes. That's a really
Mm-hmm.
big one. Those are
Big one.
basic things that I don't think any human can just really skip over.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we can, but we usually feel the side effects of it, and then it can snowball. So that's going to be the first place for both of those places to start. The next one is for like a beginner. I would again, like I kind of mentioned before, like look at your day. You know, what are you eating in your day? What is your routine like? That'll go into nervous system, but I would just do an audit on your food. Like, how is your food actually making you feel?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's looking at like, for me, when I was in the depths of my issues, I had reactions right away.
Mm.
Most of the time, it's like it went in me and went right out me. But for some, it's like sometimes food can stay in your system up to 4 days for some people. It can take protein 4 hours to digest in your gut, which is crazy. So when I learned that, I was like, are you sure? I was like, are we sure that's how long it takes? It can, anyways, depending on what it is, but and how you're chewing it and everything. But I think it's like, how are those foods actually making you feel? Because foods are going to affect everybody differently. And I would like for the beginner, those are probably some of the first things that I would assess. It's just like the mornings, like how you're starting your day, your nervous system, and then looking at what the food, how it's actually making you feel. And like when you look at those certain foods, is there any foods that like what can we add to that, instead of like I feel taking out a bunch of things a lot of the time, it's like, okay, can we maybe add some more color? Could we add some more herbs? I like to think that the herbs are like the earth's like tiny little like healer helper leaves. It's like adding more things like that so you can support like detoxification processes in your body. You can support it can be anti-inflammatory. A lot of herbs have just like a lot of healing effects. So that's the first one for the beginners, like looking at your food. What can you add rather than take out, and just like actually how it's making you feel? Because you'd be surprised when you slow down and you work on your nervous system, you breathe a little bit more, and you look at how the food's making you feel, you'll be able to tell a lot of like how your body's responding to that. And I think that's like the most basic place to start for a beginner for your gut health. For the more advanced person, so say if you were like me and you thought you were doing everything under the sun, everything under the sun, I actually would start to go in, and I feel like there's so many things I could actually say here because there's so many processes. For the person though that doesn't have the funds to go get any testing, I know I really live by an 80 to 90% anti-inflammatory diet. I
Mm-hmm.
would really start to assess, like, I have this guide and it's like putting out the fires. It's like looking at, what are you intaking that could be causing inflammation inside of your gut. So that's looking at what are the supplements you're taking? Because that was a really big one for me. I was like protein powders every single day, even though they weren't making me feel good.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them have like binders, stuff in them that is actually going to be more of an irritant to your gut and increase that inflammation. Because what we really want to do, I think, first thing is start to bring down that inflammation in your body and in your gut. So your gut can't really do its job if it's constantly inflamed. So I would look at that. It's like, what supplements are you taking? What kind of like foods are you eating that could also be like increasing inflammation, and starting to switch over to that 80%, 90% anti-inflammatory diet. Because just within that alone, if you can bring down the inflammation right away, you're going to start to feel a lot better. Your bowel movements get a lot better. And then if I can add one more thing on top of that, is some like supporting your lymphatic drainage system, like detox drainage pathways. I think that's a really big thing right now, but there's a really big hype around it for a really big reason. Unless it's only hype on my Instagram, because that's what I watch and that's my algorithm. But if you're not like in your lymphatic drainage system, like if you're not pooping and you're not sweating, there's an issue. there's a detoxification issue, and that's keeping a lot of stuff trapped inside of your body that we want to get out of your body. So between switching to like an anti-inflammatory diet, getting like a dry brush or, bouncing up and down right first thing in the morning can also help your lymphatic drainage. Saunas are a really good one, if they can get to the sauna. Castor oil packs, really good one. Just sweating, like get your body sweating. It's crazy because we're working with a client right now, and she sent me a message. She's like, "Yeah, I just like don't sweat at all." I was like, "That's an issue. That is an issue.
Mhm.
We need to work on that, like first thing."
Mhm.
Yeah, so that's what I would start with.
Yeah, sweating so important. It's like, oh, I'm just not a big sweater. Well, you got a lymphatic drainage issue probably. So, yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that too, because I think the first place a lot of people would go is like a supplement, right? And it's like
Mhm.
that shouldn't be the first place. I know that's where I went first. I spent
Yeah.
thousands on supplements and I kept getting sicker. Um,
Mhm.
but it was crazy when I did the right ones. I did them one time and I was like, done. I think what people miss out on when they do supplements too is they're not working on actually killing the issue. If there is an issue to kill, they're just working on masking the problem and like working on just symptom management, you know? So,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, great tips. And I think if you had to wrap it up, if somebody's maybe in this gut healing journey, what would you kind of give them as words of encouragement if they're kind of in the thick of it?
I feel like I could say so many things. I just want everyone to know that feeling good is your birthright. Your body knows how to heal. It just needs to be given the right support and tools to do so. And I think if I could go back and give myself a piece of advice, which that's where probably a lot of people could be right now, is that it took me a long time to get where I was. It's just not
Mhm.
an overnight fix. And to be really
Mm.
patient with myself and give yourself the most grace. And I know that's probably what a lot of people say, but it is so true. I think in today's society, and especially as women too, we put so much pressure on ourselves, and we are very like, things need to be perfect. This needs to happen now, but it doesn't. I think when we can drop timelines and we can drop pressure on ourselves, the faster things come and the easier it feels. And once you start just getting those little glimpses of feeling good, hold on to that, because that's going to just keep coming when you keep going and you hold that grace for yourself, and you don't have the pressure of like, I need to heal my entire life in 6 months, because for a lot of people that's very unrealistic.
Pressure is that control is really hard for people to let go of, you know, and it's like the
Hmm.
more you try to grip onto a timeline or expectations, the body's gonna hold on to healing or hold off
Yeah.
on healing, I should say. So,
Yeah. It's
well,
like you just create resistance. It's like,
yes. Yes, I can't tell you how many times when people just like I get it, they want to control it, things don't happen. I'm like, gotta let go, gotta let go. And it's finally like, okay, fine, I'll just listen to you. And it's like
Mhm.
whoosh, they like drop 10 pounds in like 2 weeks.
Literally.
Suddenly they're not bloated anymore. It's like, man, but everybody's on their own journey, and we all have to get there on our own time, right?
Absolutely.
Um, but anyways, Courtney, this was a great conversation. Thank you for sharing all your insights and your story. If somebody wanted to find you, where would they find you?
Thank you so much for having me. Like I said, I really like the app. You guys can find me on Instagram at Holistic Court.
Awesome. I will make sure to put her Instagram down in the show notes. And if you found this helpful or you had a good laugh, would love to know about it. Feel free to DM me or Courtney. And or write a review. That's always nice. It allows more people to spread the good word over here. So thank you so much, Courtney, again, and we'll see you guys on the next show.
Thank you.